Today I'm with Dr. Ned. It is a lot of fun. We covered a lot of ground, everything from medical to a new invention that he has on the exercise side and also a logistics app. I mean, this guy is an absolute genius. It's a home run. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. Make sure you tune into this one. It's a really good one, guys.
Y'all ready for this?
Welcome to the DeVerna podcast, where we talk about business, life, and how to win at both.
So you may have saved the life today.
Could have.
It's a big deal.
Or it could be nothing.
Well, hopefully it's nothing.
Hopefully it's nothing and I'm wrong.
Like best case scenario, it's nothing.
Best case scenario, it's nothing. Worst case scenario is like maybe 6 months.
Wow.
Because if it's in your spine, it's probably in a bunch of other places. Yeah, so
To have a job like that, like, do you feel like that's a lot of responsibility?
well, I don't think it's any more. If you're responsible, I think you should feel responsibility no matter what you do. You know, I think
that's true.
I think how responsible you make yourself maybe determine what kind of product you put out there. I mean, I've always thought, like I talk to high school kids still, once in a while, and I tell them that there's always a market for excellence. If you're excellent at whatever you do, there's going to be a market for you.
Yeah.
It's really not a market for being mediocre. You can
Right.
find a bunch of mediocre people, and they'll get by, they'll do fine.
Sure.
But if you're really excellent at your craft, you'll be, people want you. They'll pay good money for you.
Yeah.
And not. So I think that you just have to be excellent at what you do every day.
Last year, one of the neat things that Perrysburg schools did was they said they wanted each of their seniors to go to someone in their life and have them write like a letter to them, giving them guidance coming out of high school. Like, what would they do? And with Chloe, I wrote this. It was me that Chloe went to, and I wrote this whole page. And the bottom line, it said, just try to do. If you just try as hard as you can every day, like, where do you go from there? Just try.
That's all you can
Just
do.
do that. That's
you
all
can't-
you can do.
What I tell people, I say you can't confuse being the best at what you do. You have to be the best that you can be at your
Right.
craft.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you can ask for is to do your best. You give it 100%. You can't give more than 100%. 100% is
Yeah.
top.
There's two parts to that too. Like, I think the other part is, I'd make a terrible Dr. Ned. Like, I think I can be a pretty good Dan, but I'd be a terrible Dr. Ned, And so I think that's the thing, for you to be as good as you can be and me to be as good as I can be, and know that I'd be pretty disappointed if I compared myself to you in some areas of our life. And so I should compare myself to yesterday's Dan,
Well, no, I think you can look at other people for inspiration. Like I look at you and I see, one of the things that drives me when I see you or talk to you is that it's not all about work. I mean, you balance your fitness with your work, with your family. I mean, you seem like a very balanced person, which is like, crap, I wish I was more balanced. I feel like I'm either too far one way or too far the other way.
Yeah.
And I go back between the extremes depending on the day or the week or my mood, But I see you every time I see you, like, gosh, you're so balanced, and I wish I was that balanced.
I think that's funny because I don't feel that way. And I also think any of us that really look, I shouldn't even say us. Anybody that looks really balanced, we just don't see their shit. Because we've known they've got it. We're just not, they're not letting us see that part of them. You know what I mean?
Well, that may be true. I think I see what you're trying to say, but I think that the people who are trying to be really good every day sort of knows what the other person has to put in to be really good every day, and for you to be good at what you do.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to be really good, I mean, you're going to notice when people are really good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're mediocre, you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's another person who does whatever, you know?
Yeah, sure.
So I think if we I think one's ability to recognize other people's greatness. I think there's a lot of envy there, not jealousy,
Yeah.
but there's envy. Like, wow, I wish I was more like Dan.
Yeah,
I want to be like you.
that's neat. So I want to be like Dr. Ned.
I wanna be like
so
Dan.
Dr. Ned, I've known Dr. Ned for quite a while. We're rather good friends.
Unfortunately,
I hold him in very high esteem, but I still need some help with the last name. Can you help me with pronouncing your last name? Can we walk through me pronouncing your last name?
you want it, now. There's two variations. One's
Okay.
the Americanized variation
Let's hear
version,
both. I'd love to
and
hear
the
both.
Indian version.
Yes.
Well, the Indian version is Lakshmipathy. Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth, and Pati is the husband of the goddess of wealth.
Wow. That's
But
awesome.
here, it's like in the U.S., always growing up, it's like Lakshmipathy.
Lakshmipathy. Okay.
Yeah. So
Dr. Lakshmipathy.
and you know, it sounded really bad growing up in Boston, where there's a little bit of a Boston accent to Lakshmipathy, and I've lost the Boston accent for the most part, so it's Lakshmipathy.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I'm around Indian people who are from India, I mean, like who grew up there,
Yeah.
not grew up here, but when I try and say Lakshmipathy, to not to embarrass myself, or not to
Right.
make them feel like, hey, look, I'm better than you because I grew up here and you didn't, type of thing, and
Right.
I want to pronounce it Lakshmipathy, and you got to deal with it. So I try to be respectful, I think,
Yeah.
depending on who I'm talking to.
That's pretty awesome.
But assholes like you, I just say Lakshmipathy.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
That's the way you should do it. So you grew up here
Grew up in Boston.
in Boston, right?
Yep.
And so you went to school there. Did your
I graduated high school there. My parents moved my father moved here first, to Somerville, Massachusetts,
Okay.
about 20 minutes outside of Boston. And he was going to school and working at the same time. And then we came over a couple of years later, my mom and I. My brother was about a year and a half old, and she left him behind with her parents because, well, two reasons. Number one, they didn't know what they were getting into. If they'd screw it up, let's just screw up one kid, not both kids.
Yep, good.
And the other reason, actually, probably bigger reason, is that they couldn't afford to bring two kids here. So my grandfather was nice enough to, my grandfather, grandmother, they were nice enough to raise my younger brother, my second brother, for a couple of years until my parents found their feet, got in a better financial situation and more steady job, and then my brother came over. So I grew up there in the Northeast.
That's awesome. And so you went to school, you went to college there, New England Medical.
I did my residency initially at hospital called Hospital St. Raphael's, which is in New Haven.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Boston at New England Medical Center, which is
Yeah.
which is affiliated with Tufts University. It's right downtown Boston, right next to Chinatown. And then I did my fellowship there as well, and moved out to Toledo right after my fellowship in
Awesome.
'97.
Good, good. Did you always know you wanted to be a doctor? Was it like a calling, or was it just an
No,
expectation?
it was not a
or-
calling. It was not expectation. It was sort of a combination of things. One, more so that I hated math. I was really, not just hated math, I was really bad at math. And my dad's like a nuclear engineer, so he was really good at math. So
Wow,
I know I could never, ever, I mean, this guy went to MIT and this, that, the other thing. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I can barely do my additions and subtractions and my gazintas, you know?
Yeah.
So I knowing that math was definitely not my strong suit, I sort of gravitated towards more of the sciences, because to me it was easier than dealing with formulas and things like that. It was very abstract to me. With medicine, it was more like I could touch it, I could feel it, I could smell it, type of thing. Whereas these formulas are they're up in the air. I can't see them. I really can't. I don't understand math at all. So because of my fear of math and knowing that I was really bad at it, I sort of embraced the other sciences. And one of our family friends, Dr. Coca, who was an amazing guy, he took me into his workplace one day. I was in 10th grade, and he's an anesthesiologist, really well known in the anesthesia circles. Huge music fan. He loved Jimi Hendrix and all that kind of stuff. And well, he took me into work one day. I just shot him around, and I fell in love with the operating room setting. I just looked more into the different sciences, and I said, like, this is something I can do. I can kind of be okay at this, I guess.
Yeah.
I can understand this a lot easier than problems and formulas and things like that. So that's how I sort of became a doctor.
That's awesome.
But I kind of knew that I'd never want to practice as a doctor long term.
Yeah.
I know I liked it. It was sort of a gateway to something else.
So, and that gateway kind of led you to PMG, right? Is that kind of, or am I skipping too far ahead when I go there?
Well, I think you're skipping a little too far. I had a couple of, even when I was young, I had a couple of goals. I always wanted to work for myself because I saw my dad, probably the smartest person I know. And he used to bust his ass going to work every day. Smart guy, engineer. I mean, this guy helped design nuclear reactors and things like that.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy.
Really smart guy.
Yeah, really smart guy. And he used to go to work every day, work for this big corporation in downtown Boston, and would come home most days not just tired but frustrated. Dealing with people who may not be subject matter expert as he is, and also because he's an immigrant and because language was such a big problem, he was not a good communicator. And so I think for those reasons, a lot of frustration occurred. And I used to think, watch this guy come home day after day, thinking, man, I never want to be like him.
Yeah.
I have to be able to control my own destiny. I can't rely on somebody else to feed me. I got to be able to feed myself. So I never really had to work for anybody. My goal was to eventually work for myself at some point in some capacity.
Yeah, sure. It makes sense.
So I think keeping that in the back of my mind, well, actually keeping that in the forefront, no matter what I did, knowing that was a goal of mine, I had to find a way, find a profession, find a methodology where I can work for myself and still support a family, or be able to support a family. I didn't have a family back then, but
Right. Yeah. So that evolved into
when I was doing anesthesia in Boston. We did a lot of liver transplants over there. A lot of high risk operations. And one of the things that we did was we did operations in the chest where you require a breathing tube that has it's called a double lumen tube. You basically one tube, but one branch goes into one lung, another branch goes to another lung, essentially. But now you can collapse each lung separately, or you can make each lung breathe separately.
Okay.
To make operations easier. Well, at some point after the operation, you got to change that it's called a double lumen tube, to a single lumen tube. It's basically a blind procedure. So there's got to be a better way to do this. So I developed what was called a detachable bronchoscope. It's basically it's a scope with an eyepiece. It's usually one piece, and what they usually do was they put this down to people's lungs to check out, how the lungs are doing, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you had to change a scope, I thought it'd be great if we could just detach the eyepiece from the fiber optics. So now what you do is you have a tube in place, you slip the fiber optics through one tube, detach it, slip out the tube, reattach the eyepiece and make sure it's still in the lungs, take the eyepiece off, put the new tube in, reattach it and make sure it's still in the right place, and then take the fiber optics out. Now you have a secure location of this tube without any guesswork, where before it was completely blind. So that was the first product I sort of developed that had any kind of meaning to it. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I developed this product, and
That was something you created.
it was an idea. I didn't build anything.
Okay.
But my idea was that I need something that's more definitive, that can make it safer for the patient, and make it less stressful for the physician, to make sure that there's no guesswork involved in changing this tube, that this tube's going to be in the right place. So I had the design, and I had to find an engineer to build it for me. And I kind of knew what I wanted. And looking into it, was one of the things that I didn't know about. I knew like a regular one-piece bronchoscope, they call it. It's not detachable. Well, the tip can articulate. It moves. You can tip it up, tip it down, direct which lung you want to go into. Well, it's a very complicated articulating system. It's a series of vertebrae attached to pulleys, and so you can control it with your thumb. You know, moving the pulleys one way or another way, stressing it in one way direction or another direction. I said, well, that's really expensive. What's a better way to do this? What's another way to do this? I don't need to have the preciseness of moving the tube tip, but it needs to be able to move a little bit to help direct it. You know, so I decided to use air. So let's put air channels on different parts of this fiber optic tube and the detachable eyepiece. And now we can use air. You can direct the direction of the air if you want to have the fiber optic tilt one way or tilt the other way. So it's much cheaper, and all you need is an air source, and you don't have to worry about fracturing vertebrae and cables, and it's a very expensive piece of machinery. Well, this is very cheap to make. So that's sort of, I had the idea, but I don't know how to build it, and
Right.
it's just a matter of finding somebody that can build it for you. But it was things like that interested me. Like, what can I find that can make someone's job easier?
So this is, would you say like that this was the first instance of you like seeing a problem and saying, hey, I need to come up with a solution to that?
Yes.
And that's a lifelong thing for you. Like now you're not like, we talk once in a while, and this is something that like this has never left you.
This never left me.
So this is kind of like your life on some level is see a problem, I'm going to go to work on it, and then mentally you might not necessarily, you don't put together the pieces, like you're not out in the garage building this thing,
No.
but you're explaining to someone how we can take this problem and fix this problem
Right.
conceptually.
Right.
And you've done that kind of over and over, it seems, in your life.
I don't know. I haven't many attempts.
Well,
Probably not many successes, but definitely a lot of swing. It took a lot of swings and a lot of misses. So every once in a while you connect and you have something that's useful. I mean, and so it's a lot of hit or miss. It's not necessarily developing a device, but maybe a system. How to process system. I guess operational flow or system flow or information flow is what I try and figure out on a simplistic level. That's what I like to do.
so you say, every once in a while you hit one, but you've had plenty of misses. Are there any misses that like stand out? Or are there any hits that stand out or misses that stand out as, boy, I really whiffed on that one, Or is there any that, boy, we really connected the dots on that, and that changed the course of my life?
Well, most of the misses have been in real estate. I don't know anything about real estate, but I've lost a lot of money in real estate. Ultimately blaming myself because, I sometimes I take advice wholeheartedly and leave it at that. So. When they had the huge housing boom before, what was it, 2009?
Sure.
People were buying up real estate here and there. I'm not a real estate guy, and so I went into a couple of different real estate deals, really not knowing what to do, what to expect. I knew nothing about it. Really didn't have anybody. I didn't have anybody to talk to where I could ask advice. I didn't have an accountant or a lawyer that I was working with at a in a close way. I really didn't have a mentor to help guide me, and I didn't know what kind of questions to ask. I didn't know, So I knew nothing about industry. I just knew I had some money to burn, and it sounded like a good idea, and I just lost lots of money in projects like that. As far as product development is concerned, not. I can't say I took a lot of swings at product development, but I think that some of the opportunities that I could have had would have been in India, where my mom's side of the family was extremely wealthy, and they're traditionally in the liquor business. So over there, I would have had a lot of opportunities to expand their liquor business, and I think that may have I probably let that. That was probably the biggest whiff. I think I really could have made a big impact. I'm talking about just pure how to make money type of
Yeah.
thing over there.
Sure.
I don't know how rewarding it would have been, but I think that that was probably a huge miss for me. My opportunities in India when I was young, and I'm talking when I was about 20 years old, 21 years old.
Yeah.
So I recognized an opportunity, but I failed to act on that. I think I don't know if it would have made my life a whole lot of. I mean, I don't think it would affect me where I am right now, but I think it would have helped with some of my relationships I would have had in India. For example, if I had gone into the quote family business, I think
Sure.
I would have been a lot closer to some of my, second or third uncles type of thing, who were in the business. So I think I probably missed out on that opportunity. I think that would have been something I would have probably enjoyed.
Yeah.
But financially, I would have, I think I missed out on a lot, not being actively involved over there.
So when you started, your primary business is the PMG, right?
Right. So,
And how old were you when you started to dabble into that? Tell us a little bit about that development.
So after the reason I wanted to be when I was doing internal medicine, I wanted to be a cardiologist, and then one of my rotations I rotated through anesthesia as an elective, and I loved it, and I said, all right, I want to be an anesthesiologist. So I dropped out of internal medicine and found a spot in anesthesia up in Tufts. And I loved it. I wanted to do transplant anesthesia. We did a lot of transplant operations over there, and it's an anesthetic challenge. It's a surgical challenge, and it was a high intensity type of operation, and I loved it. But part of anesthesia, you rotate through pain management. So it reminded me of internal medicine because I get to talk to people, I get to manage a patient, but I still get to do procedures, which I like doing. So sort of seeing it from an academic perspective, we had two great chairmen of the department for pain management, and when I came out, finished my fellowship and came into private practice, the nuts and bolts of how to practice are not really taught in residency at all in terms of, hey, these are opportunities, these are things that are out there. In terms of, you can be an employed physician, you can be a fee for service, be
Yeah.
your own hang your own shingle type of thing, and then what are the pitfalls of each one. So nobody taught you this stuff, and I came out and started working in a hospital as an employed doctor, and they wanted me to build this pain program, and I'm like, yeah, I can build this, and I went back to administration and went back to my partners. I presented to my partners first in terms of what it would take to build a pain program in this hospital. And they're like, "Whoa, we didn't know it was going to." I went as far as, this is the kind of staff we need. We need this kind of square footage. We need this kind of equipment, and we need to have a presence on the west side of Toledo. And this is the location that I've identified. And this is what it costs to start that office up over there. And they didn't want to make that investment in me. I'm like thinking, I just moved out here. It's less than a month, and you want me to build a pain practice. You're not playing with me now. Like, what's going on here? I made the same presentation to administration, and their first question was, well, do your partner support you? I said, no, they don't support me. And they said, well, if they're not supporting you, why would we support you? Like, I dragged me and my family out here from Boston, and within 6 weeks' time, you're telling me I can't do what I was brought here to do. Why am I here? So I quit. And my wife at the time, she had this great job in Boston, and I dragged her out to Toledo, and that kind of pissed her off. She goes, "You dragged me out to Toledo for your dream job, and you're quitting in 3 months?"
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's dramatic.
Well, yeah. And I said, well, you're right. I said, if they're not going to play with me now, why would they play with me 6 months from now? We should cut and run. We can go anywhere. We don't own any property. We got a car. Everything's paid for. We got this 6-month-old kid. We can go anywhere. We got
Right.
a dog. Where do you want to go? And this job in Findlay sort of fell in my lap. And he wanted me to develop this program in Findlay. And I'm like, hey, honey, we're already here. Let's just try it for a year. If we don't like it, we can leave after a year.
Yeah.
So I joined this physician to help develop the practice, and he was awesome, great mentor, great physician. And we're supposed to be partners after a year, and things didn't work out well in terms of from a business perspective. So I ended up buying him out and developing the practice myself. So it was nice to hang my own shingle, in a year's time after graduating, which is sort of what I wanted to do. I had a great mentor to help me in terms of a little bit on the business side of things in terms of medicine, as well as the clinical side of things in medicine. So it taught me, some tricks of the trade and things like that. Just a great all-around mentor. And so early on in my career, I started, and I invested in a couple of surgical centers, one in Findlay and one in Sandusky, to run my procedures in, and quickly found out for a couple of reasons things weren't working out. Mainly, you have say 30-odd surgeons or doctors are working there in the surgical center. They all have their needs, and nobody's really focused on what my needs are. And that's the patient. I wanted my patients to be handled a certain way.
Sure.
Not that they couldn't be, not that they were handled badly, but in terms of efficiencies and things like that. How we engage a patient and whatnot. So for those reasons, I went back to the hospital and I said, no, this is not working out. This is what I'm proposing in terms of working together with the hospital here, and I'll give up my shares at the surgical center. And they sort of hemmed it out a little bit, and I finally just said, I should probably just sell my shares. I'm unhappy here. I'll just bring everything back to the hospital with a little bit more control. And then this concept of joint venturing came up, where we're now tied at the hip with the hospital in terms of providing the service line that's hospital-based. And now I'm able to control workflow patterns in terms of because it's a volume-based business. It's not like these other practices where you have where you can charge a couple of $1,000s for a procedure. Here, our margins are much smaller.
Sure.
So it's a volume-based business. So how do you maintain patient safety without sacrificing patient safety, without sacrificing quality care? How do you manage patients through a process? So it took time to sort of figure out, from the time of a phone call for referral to the time a patient's discharged out of a facility, what's that process look like? How can we make that as efficient as possible without sacrificing safety and quality? And so it took a while to sort of get it to a point where I was really happy with it, where now I'm happy with the process workflow, and now I figured, well, if it's working here, well, it should be able to work, in other areas, other centers, other locations. So the concept of PMG started there in terms of how to engage a patient, how to treat a patient, how to quote process that commodity through the system. Because, for lack of a better term, a patient is a commodity, but it's a very valuable commodity, and you can't sacrifice the safety of that commodity or the way in which you treat that commodity.
Right.
So we had to make sure that we could provide the highest quality care that we could, and in trying to develop a program and having an informal way of checking my outcomes. Are my patients getting better? If I do this procedure, am I actually helping this patient? If I order this medication, is it actually helping this patient? So tracking these outcomes, I started doing that very informally. And then after we formalized PMG, we were able to build software in-house where we do track our outcomes in a formal way. So out of all of our centers, we have about 50 different locations of 50 different partners or so across 7 different states. And we're able to track our outcomes. We know how our patients are doing. If we do a certain procedure, are they getting better? If we order certain medications, is it being helpful? Are there any medication errors? Are we doing wrong side procedures? We track all that kind of stuff, and we do that because we want to keep improving.
Right.
And unless we know what our deficiencies are, we can't improve. So if we have a provider who's sort of practicing outside of our practice paradigm, we'd have to have a discussion saying, hey, explain yourself. Why are you outside the box here?
Right.
Why aren't you playing within our box? So we have to, it's our brand. We can't have people being cowboys and doing whatever they want in terms of, for patient care. Number one, let's keep the patient safe. And so we know that we're keeping patients safe because we are tracking outcomes. We know who is, who we're not doing well by. So we want to minimize that as much as possible. And, with this whole opiate epidemic, especially in Southern Ohio, we have over 150,000 patient contacts a year, and
Wow.
we have 0 accidental deaths from opioids. So it's
It's amazing.
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, we deal with high risk patients in a high risk field, and so we've gotten really good at trying to manage patients' opioid usage. Our goal is to reduce or eliminate their usage altogether by trying to control their pain with minimal pharmaceuticals. We don't want to use multiple drugs. We try and find out where the patient's pain generators are, and then try and eliminate that as best possible, control it as best possible, minimizing the amount of medications they require. So all these things we track, and again, I don't know how to build software, but I know what we need to track to keep patients safe. And I just had one small concept in terms of, are my patients getting better with procedures? Are the medications helping them? Well, now that we have this great team at PMG who are a lot smarter than I am, we're tracking other metrics as well. Other factors that will help improve patient care and our quality of care. So that's nothing that I developed. I mean, it's where the team comes into play, and helps out a lot because I don't know most things.
So you saw the first problem, bumping into it with the hospital, but kind of I don't know, not thing, you seeing what you think is the solution, but not having the supporting, and said, hey, maybe this can be done a little different way. And that you opened that door, and then you got the team to kind of rally around and fill in the spots where you're maybe not quite as strong. Is that?
Well, I think the concept was the following, in the sense that having a team that's focused on treating patients with like conditions. So if I took a team that also helped take care of cancer patients, that also helped take care of cardiology patients, and also helped take care of pain management patients, they may be able to do it, but can they execute consistently at that high level?
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to have a team that's focused on just pain, at least in pain management. I can't really speak for cardiology or for cancer and things like that, but just in pain management, you have to have a team that's focused on treating those type of patients. Knowing about the procedures, knowing about the medications. If the patient calls with a certain complaint after a procedure or a certain complaint after changing medications, being in touch with the patients, knowing them, from a phone call, John Doe called today, and I know John Doe. How's he doing? They're familiar with the patient, and also they can anticipate what the needs are of the physician. So as they work together very much as a team, in the end, the patient receiving the best care that they possibly can. So if you have a great doctor or a great nurse who interacts with the patient probably a lot more than a doctor does, but if the nurse also is working in different departments, they may not be in tune with that,
Right.
just the pain patient. So we had to develop a program where let's get a designated team for that. That was step number one, educating them, this, that, the other thing. But that's the clinical part. But now we have, how do we expand this? If we are going to expand this to other markets, how do we formalize this? And that I don't know. I mean, in terms of, from a clinical perspective, I know what needs to be done. I know how our patients should do, but what are the other things that make it even better?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the team really, took it to the next level, more so than I could ever do.
Right.
It's nothing I could have done alone.
And you guys are really now the number one in the United States, right? Or one of the top.
Geographically, we're the largest provider for interventional pain services in the United States.
It's pretty awesome.
We have approximately 50 different partnerships in probably 60 different locations. So we cover a large territory, and our most of our hospital affiliations or partnerships are in rural areas. So our sweet spot is really a community of about 50,000 people is our sweet spot, and most of our relationships with hospitals are probably somewhere between 25 and 50,000, I'd say.
Okay.
So smaller rural communities.
But whether you're working with each individual client, that even though everybody's unique, right? But they all have a very similar, the names change and the faces change, but it's basically they're taking care of the same person over and over again, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, most of what we see are patients are spine pain patients, either who are quote pre-surgical, meaning that they're either not bad enough for surgery, or they don't want to have surgery, or they can't have surgery because they have bad lungs and bad hearts and stuff like that, or the patients who've had surgery and are sometimes no better or sometimes worse off because of scar tissue. And so, not that most people don't get better with surgery, but we in our business we see the patients who don't get better. There are a vast majority who do get better, but the ones who don't, what do you do with them? That's what we can help them with as well. So we see the two main populations of spine patients before and or after surgery.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff.
So you've done that with down to the client level, and now you're also doing that on the hospital level, because it sounds like you have a very typical client, almost a niche client for the hospitals. Like, this typically is the size hospital this works really well for. Is there a magic to that? Like, they're not big enough to have the resources to do it their own way, or you guys fit in there as a great partnership because of their size? It's unique.
What I think makes us unique is that we like to be responsible for these patients who have these pain problems. So these pain patients typically either they're sometimes taken care of by a neurosurgeon, orthopedic surgeon, a neurologist, sometimes a psychiatrist, sometimes a chiropractor. Different people are addressing that. Those are different people who may be addressing a patient's pain problem. Physical therapists. So what's the point of entry? Who's managing this pain patient? This patient who has a pain problem, whether it's a shoulder problem, either before or after shoulder surgery, a spine problem, either before or after spine surgery. But who's managing these people long term? The pain is the number one reason why patients go to the emergency room. So what we like to do is, if we get a patient who has pain, say it's a spine problem, my job is to keep that patient out of the emergency room. You don't want these people who have a flare-up of their pain problem running to the emergency room because they have a flare-up, and now they get treated in the emergency room, and they essentially act as their primary care doctors, the emergency room, for their flare-up of their pain problem. Well, we want to eliminate that cost for the hospital. We want to improve the patient's pain control so we can improve the quality of life and their level of functioning. Well, how they functioning better. Let's keep them out of the emergency room. Let's have them stop using resources. I'm going to 5-6 doctors for my pain problem. And then you compound that by the use of opioid agents. Now they're getting pain pills from a couple of different people. They may be going to the emergency room to get pain pills because they're having a flare-up. Well, we tell the patients, listen, we're going to take care of all your pain needs, whether you have a flare-up of an existing problem or development of a new problem. We can assess that. We can keep you out of the emergency room. We're going to minimize or monitor your opioid uses a lot more closely. So you're not getting opioids from multiple doctors. You're not going to the emergency room with the flare-up and they're giving you more opioids. We want to eliminate that.
Yeah.
So improving patient safety, improving the quality of the patient's life, and the level of functioning is what we're trying to accomplish by reducing costs, because it chews up a lot of costs in healthcare to treat a patient in pain, keeping them out of the emergency room, keeping them functional so they don't lose time at work and things like that. So we like to feel like we're a value-added process in a community, not just for a hospital.
That's awesome. So that's and this is kind of this is your primary function as we'll call it a day job. Is that,
My
is
day
that safe
job,
to say?
my day job is keeping out of their way.
Yeah.
If
Is that a full-time day job, or is that part-time, or how does that work?
If our CEO John Bookmeyer, if he tells me, "Get out of my way, Ned, I got work to do," I stay out of the way. They basically tell me what to do, and I just do it.
Right.
My job is being a clinician. If they need me someplace or help out someplace in a clinical aspect, from a clinical level, I'll be involved. But from a business perspective, I can't run the dishwasher. These guys are great. They know how to run a business.
That's awesome.
I don't know how to run a business.
So let's jump, if we can, to what would you say was the next problem that you saw that you decided to kind of start to try to build a solution for? I know that there's, as being a pretty good friend, I know there's a few things that you're kind of always on to the next creation. Like what are, maybe share one or two of the new creations or things on your radar or something like that.
I think well, number one, we have to continue to make sure we do a good job. So the software we created in house called iStats, we track different bunch of data. So that sort of, although it started from a concept that I had from the beginning before we even had iStats, where on paper I was tracking how my patients were doing. Hey, how are you doing? Am I helping you? Was it worthwhile going through? To what we now have at iStats, that process, although it started because of a clinical need, we now think that, it was developed, it's been added to, improved by our IT people who are involved with quality measures. They're the ones who've taken iStat to a different level, where we can now formalize by tracking actual data on how well we're doing. So we have to, the first step is, let's continue to make sure we're doing a good job, and let's improve on areas where we can improve. Now, what do we do with that information? How can we expand that? How can we make it meaningful? Well, we're trying to, my job now, I've been telling my CEO, our leader, that what I'd like to do is take on iStats and bring it from where it is now to maybe a different level or a different application. Let me give you an example. So a lot of the data we input is manual. I'm trying to figure out a way, how do we uniformly digitize this, automate this, where we're not chewing a lot of man hours in procuring data, entering data. We don't want to just be data entry. Like, how can we do it in a more efficient manner? But taking that process now, and let's apply it to other specialties. How are the cardiologists doing? How are the other various surgeons doing with their patient pool? What are their outcomes like? Are they providing meaningful service to the community? If we had a physician who was doing all kinds of procedures and their patients weren't getting better, we're gonna have a discussion. Why are your patients not doing well? Is it patient selection? Or what is going on here? Let's identify the issue. So in a similar way, if somebody who is having a different specialty, whether it's an eye doctor, obstetrician, it doesn't matter, general surgeon, who is tracking their outcomes? I don't know for sure, but I gotta believe we have to be the only private practice, medical practice in the country that tracks this much data to monitor our performance.
To self-monitor.
Self-monitor.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. We have to accept our deficiencies and address those deficiencies.
Yeah.
If you're not asking the question, if you're not asking the question, how are you going to solve the problem?
Right.
So I think we have to be more transparent, I guess is one way of putting this. Not just our specialty, but every specialty. Why is it just us? Why can't other specialties be held accountable for their performance? I'm not talking about pay for performance. I'm talking about, hey, if I'm one of 20 orthopedic surgeons who does knee replacements, and I got one guy who's just got all these complications, I don't want to be associated with that person. I don't want him seeing any of my patients. Why is that physician seeing any patients to begin with? I mean, there's an issue and it needs to be addressed, is my point.
Right, yeah.
So early detection and addressing that issue, whatever it may be, in a manner that's consistent with hospital policy and procedures, needs to be done. So increased awareness is what we need to bring to the table.
Yeah, he might not even know he's the worst one.
He may not know.
Like,
He may be like, hey, this is fucking great.
his partner, I mean, he might have a partner that's a rock star and doing fantastic, and he doesn't even know, like, because they might not even, they might pass in the halls. They don't even know who the weakest link is, or maybe they do.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't matter, right?
Right. And we hope that we can weed out, bring to people's attention that there are issues that need to be addressed. And, weeding out those bad apples. The ones who want to improve, let's get an action plan going. The ones that don't give a shit, let's cut and run. I don't want that doctor working in this hospital, or if I'm an insurance carrier, do I want to have that doctor work on my patients? Where if the complication develops, I got to pay for this patient's complications. As an insurance carrier, for how long? So I think that there are many people who want to maintain a certain level of quality, and we have to be able to create a process where we can self-monitor and address and make people accountable, give people the tools to identify issues, and they need to be addressed in a manner they feel that it's acceptable.
Yeah. So
within the
you've built a
community.
process inside of your 50 companies or 50 relationships, and now you think that's transferable
Well, we're
to other people, not just in the same specific niche, but also outside to, a much grander population of potential health issues.
Yes. So, and again, I didn't build it; the team built it.
Yeah.
But I think that we can, as they built a great product, I think let's apply it in a different manner. Let's see how well, if we can improve on what we have right now. So I think that would be an important step in terms of building something meaningful that is patient-centric.
Yeah. Awesome. That's pretty neat.
We'll see.
That's a big deal.
I think that what I'd love to work on at some point is a way we can reduce the economic burden on patients so they have better access to health care. Right now, seeing patients who, most of the patients I see are spine-related issues, but along with that, I see tons of patients who have knee problems or hip problems who need a hip replacement or knee replacement. And I can't tell you how many times I see a patient who says, yeah, doc, I can't get my hip replaced this year. I'm saving enough money so I can pay for the hip next year. I'll have enough of the deductible. I mean, look at this guy. He's whatever. Let's say he's a 65-year-old person who's got a bad hip and needs to have it replaced, but now goes a whole year with a bad hip. And, problems travel north. So if you get a bad hip, you're going to be walking funny and mechanics change. Now they got a lower back problem. Now you got to address that issue.
Right.
Or they have so much pain from the hip, they maybe fall and hurt something else.
Yeah.
They got a shoulder problem. So my point is, this individual is not getting their hip replaced because they can't afford to. And who knows, delay of treatment, what that causes down the road.
Right.
Well, we need to get away, figure out how that individual can get that hip replaced earlier rather than having to suffer with that and develop secondary, tertiary problems.
Right.
Yeah. So that's hopefully what we can address. There's got to be a system where we can make a meaningful impact on reducing that financial burden on patients so they can receive the care they need and not have to put things off. A hip replacement is just one example. What about all the other stuff that goes on?
All kinds of things.
All kinds of things.
It's a very broken system, right?
It's a very broken system. I think the talent is there. I think the U.S. has the best doctors and healthcare providers, but I think the system is definitely broken. We got to figure out a way how to make it more accessible.
I think
financially.
reworking that process somehow, right? Like, I mean, it's not for lack of, like, when somebody comes into being a doctor, like, they're very passionate, they're very excited, and they want to change the world.
Want to change the world,
And then suddenly they're in this system where they just feel like they're in the current, and the current's going so fast, and they're just trying to keep up with the current.
Yeah.
It seems like is when I talk to my friends that are docs, it just seems like the current's moving so fast. It's all they can do to keep their head above it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of a lot of things that a lot of doctors are not prepared for in terms of what's coming around the corner in medicine, whether it's the science end of it, whether it's the business end of it, the administrative end of it, regulatory end of it. There's a lot of things that are involved in taking care of patients or practicing as a clinician. And it can be overwhelming.
Sure.
You know,
Well, they don't, like you said, they don't teach you that in med school.
they don't teach you nearly enough, or at least inform you of what's out there. And hey, look, these are the things that you'll have issues with in the future, and here are some I guess these references, these support groups or support structures that are available for you for help.
Right.
This organization, that organization, whatever it may be. But we may have clinical skills, but the other facets of healthcare are not really there. I mean, most physicians are being employed, and they don't want to deal with all the administrative stuff and deal with all the issues with how to run a business. They just want to work as a doctor and go home and be employed. And I think that trend's gonna continue because most doctors won't be able to can't afford to run their own practices because a lot of them are not trained on how to run a practice. They're great doctors, but maybe not great business people.
Sure. Yeah. So let's jump away from the medical stuff for a minute. And I'm thinking of like another situation where I feel like you saw a problem and you said, "Hey, I think I'm still not sure that I can keep up with your brain. Like I think it moves a lot faster in a different way than mine does, and so I'm trying to get towards your like links and what you saw there and kind of what you're working towards the problem you're trying to solve and how that, because I find it interesting that it just seems like it's recreating, whether you see it or not, inside of from the outside, it looks like you're seeing a problem and you're like, oh, we're going to get to work on this problem. So like here, we can find a way to, I come up with the conceptual idea of how to fix it. And then I find the people that have the capacity to put things together to help me do that.
Links was again an unexpected project. One of my neighbors and good friends is in the trucking business, as a carrier as well as a broker, and he was over our house some time back, and he was just bitching and moaning about the industry and how fractionated it was, and how I can't get this done, that done. This is bullshit. That's he's all about everything bullshit.
Yeah.
type of guy.
Yeah, sure.
But he's a self-made guy. He started and runs and continues to expand his logistics operation in terms of being a carrier, broker, and some other stuff. And I mean, just a salt of the earth type of guy. Really, really, really super person. But just like I would bitch and moan about stuff in the medical field, I mean, he's bitching and moaning about stuff in his industry, which I know nothing about. But he was telling me what was bothering him, what some of the deficiencies are, and I'm just sitting there listening, and the next day I called him. I said, Tony, I think, let me think about this. I had a great conversation with you. Let me think about this. I think I may be able to help you, but give me a couple of days. And I thought about some of the things that can be done. How should information flow? I had no idea what a broker is in the logistics business. I had no idea what really a carrier meant. What's the difference between a customer and a shipper? The hell do I know? I can't spell customer. So anyway, what I said to him was, I said, I think I may have a way we can process some of this, address some of these issues. Let me talk to one of my partners who was an IT guy, and I talked to him about it, and we I went and talked to Tony. I said, Tony, I think we can do this. I said, these are the issues, you know, in terms of from a carrier's perspective. This is what you would like. This is what because he also owns a brokerage firm. So from a broker's perspective, this is what these issues are for
Sure.
a brokerage firm. You know, what a customer's afraid of, what are their concerns, you know, what are receivers, what are their concerns, and trying to figure out, well, how do we optimize communication between a shipper, a possible broker, a carrier, and a receiver, and the driver. You know, how do we keep track of this? How do we keep track of that? Where's the driver? Where's the shipment? Where's my load going to be picked up from? Where's it dropped off from? You know, how do I procure a load? How do I know when it's arriving? What the route is? All these different things. You know, how far did I travel? What's the driver's time? You know, how do I know the driver's actually driving and not, you know, and not didn't shut his device off and logged fewer hours and drove longer miles. I mean, this unaccounted driver time issue. So there were many issues that came up, and trying to figure out what is important, what is not important. You know, how to triage these issues. And so I think what Lynx was, you know, bringing together somebody who was an industry leader in the brokerage side and the carrier side, bring together the IT, you know, behind this, the person who can write the code, and bring in people who would act as consultants. You know, what do we need to do from a sales perspective? You know, how do you, as a salesperson, how do you see this product as it compares to other products? You know, you're in sales, you may be selling, you know, engines for race cars, but you know, you could sell anything. This is a product we'd like to sell. What other like products out there? You know, how would you sell ours over theirs? What will be a selling feature? So how to promote ourselves? What to focus on from a different perspective? So getting these people together and putting ideas on paper and figuring out a flow of how information, you know, where the information starts, where the request starts from, and how the request is addressed and finally delivered. And that whole process is very convoluted, very complex, and it took time to sort of understand that. And I at this point I still understand it in a very superficial way. And it's a very complicated field. I never realized the intricacies of the logistics business, the politics of logistics business, which is a big thing. And, you know, so how do we appeal to how do we have a product that appeals to a driver? How do we have a product that appeals to a carrier, a shipper, a customer, a broker? You know, how do we get all these people involved in wanting this product in a meaningful way?
Right.
So something that's affordable, reduces time, you know, so you're not spending all this time fielding phone calls. So communication, how do you communicate without actually having to pick a phone up? How are alerts sent? How are requests sent? How are requests received? So that process, you know, took some time, and we made a lot of mistakes, and we still continue to try and identify these deficiencies and improve on them. But we're very close to a product now. It's been about a solid year and a half in the making, but we're very close, and it could have been something even better, I think, in retrospect. But I think we get a solid product, which I think has a definite marketplace. And our main marketplace is really catering to the small to mid-size, mainly the small carriers. You know, people who have 5 trucks, 10 trucks, that marketplace. But since most of the carriers out there, I think the number is about 90% of the carriers are small carriers.
Okay. Oh, that's
surprising. So they need something that's transparent, that's something that's affordable, easy to use, you know, that they can hand off to their accountant and say, hey, these are my expenses, blah, blah, blah. The simple stuff.
Sure.
You know, but at the same time, it's sophisticated enough where even larger carriers can use this. So it's scalable, but it was meant for the small carrier, something that they can afford, something that they can help run and improve their business day to day. So we have a mobile app, we have a web-based app that we developed for this. So if you're an owner-operator, you don't have to be in front of a computer. You can do it on your smartphone. If you got a smartphone, it actually has more features on the smartphone than it does on a web-based app.
Wow.
So, but again, it's just process flow.
Yeah.
It's just similar to to medicine. The key to anything is communication. Who's listening? How do you listen, and then how do you communicate to somebody else? So I think that's a very basic process. It's probably the most important step in anything. So whether you communicate verbally or in a digital format, whether computers communicate with other computers, it's how are they communicating? Is your request being understood and are able to execute in the back end?
Yeah. So you've kind of taken the same approach, whether it was this medical device or the process on the medical side, and streamlining that, and then data, and then it sounds like in the Lynx situation, it's again data.
It's data.
Like it's data. It's taking all of the input from all the different sources. What's important, because obviously what's important to the broker, what's important to the person being delivered to, and what's important to the driver. Those are three very different perspectives.
Yes.
So, what generally happens is maybe one or maybe two of those are satisfied, but the third one's pissed off about it. The driver thinks, this is, they're just making it a bigger hassle for my life. So to make all those entities and more satisfied with a product, that's a lot of effort.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a simple question like that. There's got to be something in your life, whether it's your personal life or your job, that you wish you said, God, if I just had this thing, my life would be
Right.
so much. My job would be so much easier.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the analogy would be is if I was in. I like tennis. I mean, I used to play a lot of tennis.
Yeah.
If I was in 10% better shape, I'd probably be a 30% better tennis player.
Yeah.
type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, what is that small thing that you need, that maybe it makes up 10% of your time, but adds 30% value.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
So you're just looking for that. Like, I know you're kind of in the, well, I guess you could call it venture capitalist space. Like, you're always looking for new ideas and new things and, fresh things to throw a little bit of energy at, and it's exciting to solve a problem. And when you do hit one and you connect, it's a home run. I mean, that pays for a lot of sins, and then it's okay to miss a few times, or for something to take a little bit more time to develop, right?
I don't think you can. You can't be afraid of failure. I mean, this is. I don't say what I do is high risk. I never take a risk that I can afford to lose on. So I'm not a gambler, but if I can afford to bring a certain project to fruition, and it happens, great. But if I fail, I'm not really losing much. It doesn't affect my family. It doesn't affect my other businesses. Mm-hmm. So it's a failure.
Right.
And so I don't think people should be afraid of failure. I'm not afraid of failing.
Right.
And I think that making an informed decision, calculating when to swing that bat, identifying that pitch and trying to identify what kind of pitch it is and connecting with that bat, to maximize that. It's sort of like, is this a fastball? Is this a curveball? Identifying it sooner rather than later. In tennis, is it a slice serve? Is it a topspin serve? Is this going to be an American twist serve? Trying to sort of anticipate based upon the arc of the racket of the server. Which direction is the ball going to go, forehand or backhand? So I think trying to be anticipatory is going to be very important in making a decision whether you take that swing. But unless you swing that bat, you're not going to connect. So it has to be an informed decision on when to take that swing. But I think a big mistake is if you don't try at all. So
I totally agree. I mean, Gretzky, you miss all the shots you don't take. But are there any other kind of shots that you've got that are out there that we should know about? I think we're kind of coming close to our time limit, but is there one or two other things that you're kind of like, hey, I'm thinking about this or working on this or anything else we should know about?
Well, I'm working on an exercise machine. The product name is going to be called Vahana. And what I'm trying to target with this is to maximize the recruitment of as many major flexors and extensors and core muscles in your body simultaneously to maximize your workout. To maximize the calorie burn per even 15 minutes. So I've been working on that device now. It's in concept. We have renderings, 3D renderings of that, what the device, how the device should function. We've engaged the university to help develop the device in the engineering department. So that's going to be an exciting project for me.
That sounds fun.
It is.
It's a big deal.
It'll be fun to sort of engage with college students and sort of get ideas from them on or see what their thoughts are about the device. And because there's certain things from an engineering perspective that I want the device to do, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of solution they have to reach that goal. We're also related to the health field, developing. We're getting into the fintech business on how to actually reduce healthcare costs for patients, which hopefully will be meaningful.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, so we're in the process of developing an app to improve accessibility of healthcare and reduce healthcare costs for app holders. It would be a free app.
Awesome.
So we're hoping to be impactful in the community.
Solving problems.
Yeah, hopefully we'll solve some problems, and hopefully it'll be meaningful for people, for end users, and on the back end, we're hoping to make money off this. But the process is fun.
Yeah.
That's what really gets me going. Is I love the process.
Yeah. That's the genius of it. I mean, the neat thing is that there's so many people that think about they think about it enough to complain about it, but they don't think about it enough to do something about it. I mean, that happens. I'm guilty. We all have these things where we're like, oh, geez, if I just this, and then they might even say it out loud, but then that's it. That's the last. Like they really aren't willing to do anything about it. They just say something about it, and then they just let it go.
Well, I do that a lot too.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. Well, we're doing a lot of good.
But it is again. People, they're like wondering why you do this, and it's really it's like painting. It's like reading a good book. To me, I like this stuff.
Yeah. This isn't work, right?
It's not work at all.
Right.
This is just. It just drives me. It's passion.
Yeah.
Figuring stuff out.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the element that sounds like you've hit a home run in a couple ways, but you've got some close people to you that are the right kind of teammates. And when you have the right kind of teammates, it makes everything much better.
Oh my God! I mean, PMG from my concept of PMG before it was really PMG, it was a good product, but with these teammates that I have, they've elevated it into a great product. I mean, great leadership. We have a great CEO. We have a great CFO. We got a great COO. I mean, our leadership is just absolutely amazing, and it just trickles down. They have a great team helping them. So individually, this would be impossible. This would be impossible. You have all these terrific minds working together as a team, solving problems. It's very humbling to know that you're no longer needed in this process.
Yeah.
I can relate to this. I'm totally dispensable.
It's the best and worst thing.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean,
it's both.
I'm the most useless person in this whole team.
Yeah.
Basically, they don't, So, but it's great that they're able to do that kind of work.
Yeah.
So it's very humbling.
It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
People are awesome.
Well,
especially you.
We'll be looking for. I totally agree. We will be looking for some good updates. Great to spend some time with you always. Appreciate the time and the energy, and we will kind of have to stay in touch on some of these things and keep everybody abreast of the new exercise, the logistics app, the taking over of healthcare and saving people money and saving their lives.
You had me at abreast.
It's awesome. Good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dan.
Good seeing you, Doctor.
DeVerna offers products and services using the following business names: Creative Financial Partners, Insurance and Financial Services, Ameritas Investment Company, LLC, AIC, member FINRA, SIPC, Security Investments, Ameritas Advisory Services, AAS Investment Advisory Services. AIC and AAS are not affiliated with Creative Financial Partners. Products and services are limited to residents of states where the representative is registered. This is not an offer of securities in any jurisdiction, nor is it specifically directed to a resident of any jurisdiction. As with any security request and prospectus from a representative, read carefully before you invest or send money. A representative will contact you to provide requested information. Representatives of AIC and AAS do not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney regarding the situation.
Whew. Thanks for watching.